You are the player, because your vision is our vision. The player.
Well, before we get started with the episode, let's take a look at what came in the box with Mr. Do. Now, I've always liked the ColecoVision boxes, as I've said in the earlier video of Frenzy. I like how they put the actual picture of the arcade game on the front of the box. It's pretty cool. This box has definitely seen better days. It's pretty crushed and banged up, but it's still really cool. Of course, on the back, it shows some of the different screens that you can play through. And it gives a little brief description of what you're doing. Basically, running around collecting cherries, dropping apples on these little evil critters. Pretty fun game. It's actually a very faithful port to the ColecoVision from the arcade. Of course, we have our little cartridge right here. Pretty plain, but at least it has the arcade logo on here. ColecoVision cartridges look really nice. And then we have our instruction manual. It's blue, black, and white. Pretty nice. Shows the different characters in the game. Of course, Mr. Do, he's all white. The bad guy. I like that. Just simply name him the bad guy. The all-alpha monster, the digger, and the blue chomper. Got your different challenge levels you can select. 1 to 4. 1 being the easiest, which is the level I like to play. And skill level 4 is the most challenging. It's even harder than the arcade version. Holy moly. How to use controller, the play screen itself. What's happening on there. Pretty cool. It's actually a really nice manual. They did a good job. Alright. Enough looking at this. Let's talk about Mr. Do on the ColecoVision. Well, welcome everyone to this episode of ColecoCade 2400, where today we're going to take a look at Mr. Do. Joining me is Arkay from the Toy Tune podcast.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
So, we'll start off with the arcade game first. This came out in 1982 by Universal, and it featured a little clown running around in the underground digging tunnels, collecting cherries, dropping apples on unsuspecting critters, and having just a generally good time. I remember first playing the arcade game at my local arcade back in the mid-80s or so. I discovered the game after playing Dig Dug. I started off with Atari's Dig Dug first, and then I discovered Mr. Do. And I like both games. I like Mr. Do just a little bit better because how you have the little ball that you can throw at your enemies. I kind of like that. It's kind of fun. And that's just the way I think about it. What do you think about the arcade game?
Well, I think you first started calling him an evil little clown. I think I think if he was more like Pennywise, I probably would have liked the game almost as much as you.
He gets the souls of the critters. Yes.
Yeah. I liked playing the game, but it wasn't a go-to game for me. I think I just liked shooters and space games more back then.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever saw the game in the arcade. And I mean, I back then in 82,
yep.
That was when I went to the boardwalk in New Jersey and saw everything, but I really never saw Mr. Do, and we had an arcade in town. My first time with the game was on the ColecoVision.
Oh.
And then I went looking for it, and by then, Dig Dug had come out, and I kind of liked Dig Dug.
Mm-hmm.
So a neighbor of mine had a ColecoVision, and he introduced it to me, and it was just so surrealistic. I didn't understand it. It's like, it's a top-down view, but it's a clown kind of making crop circles in a field, collecting cherries, but the apples have gravity. So, and it's funny because you hear how people have a problem with Zaxxon, and I have no problems with Zaxxon. It's one of my favorite games, and yet I was having a hard time bending my head around Mr. Do. I was clearly overthinking it. So it's bizarre. I mean, there's a clown in a field pushing apples that seem to have kind of like sideways gravity, but from a top-down view. So I don't know. I never fully warmed up to it, but it was a strange game. But I did, eventually play it in MAME, and he was very animated and very colorful, multicolored, and I kind of liked when he was like when a monster. I don't know what are those dinosaurs or monsters? I don't even know what they really were. When they got him, he would fall down. You could see him fall on his stomach, and his feet would go up and everything.
Yes, and it'll twitch. Yeah,
I love that. I mean, I didn't mind when I got nailed because he was kind of fun to watch him kind of look confused and all disheveled and everything, which clearly was not in the ColecoVision version.
No, it wasn't.
I mean, they did a good job mimicking it and sounding like it, but he was a white silhouette.
Yeah, the ColecoVision version was kind of like monochromatic.
Yeah.
The critters didn't have any real details. They're one color. Everything was pretty much a single color in the game, which, isn't too bad. One of the things I did notice about it is it didn't really flicker as much as I expected it to.
Yeah, considering that there were a lot of creatures and those letters and apples. The apple, every once in a while an apple would kind of flicker.
Yes.
But aside from that, no, it held together really well. And I think that, the overhead view or the background or whatever it was that you would be running through, making the crop circles, digging your tunnels and the cherries, they matched the colors of the arcade pretty well because each screen had a different color scheme.
Oh, yeah. Well, they also matched how the screens are laid out, where you have the OD at the beginning and then 1, 2, 3, 4. That's kind of cool how they mimicked the arcade that way. So it kind of brought the arcade experience home, which was the whole theory behind the ColecoVision, bringing the arcade experience home and all that kind of stuff.
Which they did. But like Pac-Man, it must have been disorienting for people who did play it in the arcade because it's horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's vertical. I'm sorry. Excuse me. It's vertical, whereas the ColecoVision version is horizontal. It's laid out landscape.
Yes.
And I played it in MAME, and I kind of liked the portrait version, the vertical version. But the horizontal version, I didn't have to get used to it because that was the first time I played it. I actually remember the first night I played it at this guy's place, and he was really into the ColecoVision, and he says, "Check this out," and Mr. Do, and I thought it was Mr. like DEW, Mr. Do.
Okay, yeah, like Mountain Dew, yeah.
Yeah, like Mr. Do, and and I wasn't, and I said, "Is that a clown? Is that the Sandman?" Because it was just a white silhouette. So he showed me the box, and I'm like, I don't get it. Dig Dug, I kind of understood because he's kind of in a underground hazmat suit with a bicycle pump or whatever he's got, and I don't know why that made sense to me, but this one just kind of eluded me.
Well, I think one of the main draws for me on this game was how it had some of these different type of game mechanics that Dig Dug didn't have. For example, you had what was called the Alpha Monster. At the top of the screen, you had some letters that spelled out extra, and every once in a while, either you get the bonus in the middle of the screen to cause the Alpha Monster to pop out, or at every so often, a point level, the Alpha Monster would come out on its own. And the idea was to try to destroy the Alpha Monster to get that letter. And if you spelled extra, you get a free Mr. Do. And it had like a little cut scene and everything where it shows Mr. Do coming up. You got a free Mr. Do, which I thought was pretty cool.
Right. Yeah.
And then, of course, there was another feature of the game that it was very rare to happen, but if an apple would drop and bust open, sometimes there would be a diamond that would appear.
Yes.
And if you got the diamond, it would instantly end the level. It would also give you a free game on the arcade version.
Yeah, I was playing it today on the ColecoVision, preparing for this, and I got a diamond. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember what the diamond gave me. What did it give me? Did it give me an extra life?
It just ends the level. I think it gave you an extra life. It does give you a free game, which is no use because you're not putting a quarter in the thing or nothing like that.
Yeah.
There's some gameplay mechanics differences between the arcade Mr. Do and the ColecoVision Mr. Do. For example, on the arcade version, as you light up the extra at the top, if the alpha monster is on a letter you already had, and you hit the bonus item in the middle of the screen, either like it's a pie or ice cream or whatever, it'll pop on out with the little chomper monsters running around as well.
Yeah.
On the ColecoVision version, if you have the alpha monster in a letter you already have, and you hit the bonus, all the enemies just stop on the screen and it plays this little tune. So you have a certain amount, you have a little bit extra time to get around on the screen before the monsters start moving again. That's a little bit of a difference that they did gameplay-wise between the arcade and the ColecoVision version.
The some of the graphic differences were kind of obvious too. The ball that he throws is much bigger in the arcade.
You can barely see it on the ColecoVision, it's a little dot.
You can hardly see it, and when it hits a target, it's almost like Defender the way it spreads across the screen in the arcade.
Yes.
And that was kind of missing. I don't know. I mean, Coleco was, those ColecoVision games were pretty accurate. I'm kind of wondering why some of these, why some of the things in this game were missing. I think some of it could have.
It's limitations of the ColecoVision system itself.
And yet, the last video we did was Frenzy, and I thought it was better than the arcade version.
Oh my gosh, Frenzy's so awesome on the ColecoVision.
Right, and we did that one. So why does that one come up short? Because there's a lot going on in Frenzy.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it all depends who programmed it, who's in charge of getting it converted.
Well, they're fired.
They're fired. But at least it gets the gist of the game onto the ColecoVision, which was the whole point.
Yeah, and I think it actually probably extended the life of this game because it was on the ColecoVision.
Oh yeah, I don't see a Mr. Do in the arcade very often. The last one I saw was at the Galloping Ghost arcade up in Chicago, and I've not seen one since. It's been a couple years since I played this game in an arcade. But usually when I do find it, I usually will play it a couple times.
Yeah, I walk right by it, Willie.
Just walk over. Heck with Mr. Do, man.
I get enough of it at home. I mean, and even with a stack of cartridges, and I had Mr. Do and everything, and I would sit down and play my ColecoVision for a half hour or so back then. Mr. Do, if I even put it in the ColecoVision, I would play like, as soon as I died, I'd pull it out and go to something else.
Well, I did notice I last a lot longer playing the ColecoVision version than I do the arcade version. I get a lot farther into the levels for some reason. Today I noticed, I don't know if it was my joystick, how precise is the joystick when you're playing with it on the ColecoVision? Well, there is like a little, I don't want to call it a glitch, but you can get your little Mr. Do guy to get stuck when you're trying around a corner and stuff.
And you can get them stuck on an apple if it's not pushed exactly all the way. And I was losing today because of that, and it was ticking me off.
Yes, that can definitely happen.
What game are we doing next?
Yeah. Well, we go ahead and discuss that now. I think the next game that I think we're going to do, not Mr. Do, because we just did Mr. Do.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll do, let's see. I think we'll do Gorf.
Now you're talking.
Yeah, we'll do Gorf on the next one. So until next time, everybody, get your little evil clown. Why do I keep calling him an evil clown? Run your little clown around and get those cherries.
I don't know, but you know what, Willie? Since you've been calling him an evil clown, you've given me a new attitude about this game. If I think of him as an evil clown, I might actually start playing this game in a whole different way.
You are the player, because your vision is our vision. The player. Atari, Atari.
I played on ColecoCade.
You are the player. You are the player.